We're going to continue our look into a few meal prep and delivery services, and today we're looking at Factor or Factor 75. It depends on what kind of branding they're shooting your way. I've heard them both refer to themselves as Factor. I've heard them refer to themselves as Factor 75. For me, when I got the food, it just said Factor. So just to take a little bit of a review on things, I'm a little bit of a larger gentleman. Just wanted to kind of save a little bit of time. When I get off work, it's about an hour to 2 hours, maybe even more, depending on what I'm cooking, how many dishes I have to do, etc. I was just kind of looking to cut that time out completely and to have a bit more free time, not to have to worry about cooking or cleaning or even grocery shopping, like prepping the meal, etc. That's another reason why I'm not a fan of like HelloFresh and delivery systems like that, because it's essentially like it's a grocery delivery. All it is like a grocery delivery from Walmart with a recipe card. You get a clove of garlic, you have to mince it. You get this, you have to try. Like, it almost took me more time with situations like that than it did just to cook something I would want. Now, everything I cooked was obviously better because of the recipes, etc. But let's move on. Last time we looked at Cook Unity, which so far has been head and shoulders above everybody we've looked at since. Today, again, we're going to look at Factor, and just to take a look at their packaging, it's rather simple, straightforward. I will say one thing that Factor has when it comes to their packaging that nobody else that we've looked into has. They have a full nutritional value chart right there. They've got calories, total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, sodium, 36%, by the way. So now you can see why a lot of the people aren't putting that on their nutritional value facts. That's not part of their macros. You've got your total carbohydrates, your fiber, your sugars, protein, vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium. It breaks everything down for you right here on the back of each and every meal. It also has preparation instructions for both the microwave and the oven. Depending on what you're cooking, the microwave's fine. If you do get anything with fish, which I will say Factor did offer a lot of choices with seafood and different types of fish fillets, I would very much recommend cooking any of those dishes in the oven. Just please God, do us all a favor, put it in the oven. But overall, the packaging's fine. Like I showed you, it's very simple to the point. On the front, you have just like, their little slogans, chef prepared, dietitian approved, no prep, no mess, heat and eat in 2 minutes. America's #1 ready to eat, heat and eat meal kit. And this is what it looks like on the inside. Nothing too fancy. It's a little hard to see because of the green screen and the light there. Right here, we have a little bit of ground beef with some goat cheese, mushroom sauce, and some green beans. This is the tomato basil chicken with broccoli. This is the tomato chicken basil with risotto, and that's the broccoli. That's the green screen broccoli. One thing I'll give Factor, other than the nutritional value, is that they have the best green beans I've ever had from any sort of frozen or microwavable food company. Like, leaps and bounds. I've gone to restaurants and not had green beans as just perfect as these. So that's one thing they've got. And you know me, I'm always about the sales, about saving a few dollars. That comes from growing up poor and still being poor. But what drew me to Factor is that they get a lot of reviews, a lot of publicity. They've got a lot of advertising out there. But I want to say it was the first week you can get 50% off, then like 20% off the week after. So I was able to get 18 of these meals that they, unlike Flex Pro meals, they don't have like a small, medium, large, anything like that. I was able to get 18 of these meals for $109. Now, overall, that's a pretty damn good price if you ask me. Now, obviously, it's going to be closer to $200 after the discounts, no longer available. But comparing it to Flex Pro meals, it is, I want to say, for 3 less meals a week, we're talking about a $46 to $50 difference. And comparing the quality of food between Factor and Flex Pro meals, it's no comparison. As I showed earlier, I was a bit worried when it came to Factor that it was a bit too much TV dinner-esque. Like, it looks a little too, Hungry Man, if that makes sense. But that's not really the case. One complaint I will say is that it seems like a lot of the dishes, the one I showed is a bit out of the ordinary in that there's a side and like what you would consider a main for the course, where it seems like most dishes have a main and then like two things that are best just added on to the main, if that makes sense. So portion wise, some of them can feel a bit small. I want to say the calories were coming into from about 500 to 650. A matter of fact, the one we have right here is 640. So it's not too bad. It's kind of on par with the calories per, Flex Pro meals, Cook Unity, etc. All of them, the caloric ranges seems to be pretty on par. And like I was saying earlier, for them to put on the label that they have 830 milligrams of sodium and that's 36% of your daily value, just stop and think how much sodium the companies that aren't putting that information on there have. And I will say, saturated fat wise, 19 grams, that's 95% of your saturated fat in one of these meals. Some would say that's a bit rough, especially for something that quote unquote is chef prepared and dietitian approved. I don't know what dietitian approves 19 grams of fucking saturated fats, 95% of your daily value in one meal. That's a total of 303 grams. That doesn't seem, it seems a bit off. So that's a bit of a red flag for some people. I would say, like, especially if you have issues with like cholesterol or heart problems, things like that, probably not really the best thing for you. And some people would say, well, if this is a company that tells you how much sodium and saturated fats, trans fats, etc. they have, you can only imagine how ridiculously high those numbers are for companies that purposely avoid giving you that information. Like I was saying earlier, I was worried that Factor would be a bit lower quality, a bit more on the TV dinner hungry man side of things. And I will say I was wrong, but I was kind of right. I was wrong in that the flavors, when they're on, they are on. In fact, there were only, I think, one or two dishes. Actually, there was one dish flavor wise I didn't like out of all 18. There was only one I didn't like. So that's good. But the quality of the food is there. Like, for a lot of the ingredients, you can see that it's quality. One of the main things that kind of stuck with me is like you use a lot of zucchini. And I have to say, I love zucchini, but this was some of the worst zucchini, like texturally speaking, like mouthfeel. It was very chewy and like wet and mushy, just not good at all. I'm pretty disappointed in any meal that had zucchini in it. As someone who loves zucchini, it was a swing and a big miss on every meal that had zucchini in it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the green beans were like delicious, and that's another reason I was a bit shocked about the zucchini, because the green beans show you they can do it. Like, the green beans are fantastic, especially the Parmesan green beans. Woo, woo, god damn, they were good, man. They were good. Similar to the other companies, Factor comes in a large box, obviously. It has one of the most environmentally safe and friendly packaging setups that we've seen. It all seems to be like reusable cardboard, etc. Also, when it comes to shipping, I will say they did take substantially the longest to fill my order. Flex Pro, I think, was literally like the next day. I want to say Cook Unity was a full week, and Factor, it took them like 2 to 2.5 weeks from the time I ordered it for it to actually be delivered. In the shipping, as you could tell from the box, it wasn't nearly as beat up as Flex Pro meals or Cook Unity, but that doesn't really kind of fall on the company necessarily, so you can't really hold that for or against them one way or the other. So now we'll take a moment just to look back on a few of the meals and go over some things. One of the first meals I'd had was a sweet corn and jalapeno polenta with chicken and creamy corn grits and roasted peppers. The peppers, I'll be honest, were a bit like waterlogged, like I mentioned earlier with the zucchini. None of the food arrived frozen, which is a big deal for me. I really appreciate that. As we touched earlier, full nutritional facts on there. Pretty much any and all information you'd want. I never really had polenta, but from my understanding, it's supposed to be very similar to grits. So the sweet corn in the grits, like the grits themselves didn't have the best flavor, but the sweet corn really helped like drive that home. So overall, I was a really big fan of the grits slash polenta. The meal as a whole was good. The one main thing that stuck out to me though is the chicken tasted fine. The texture was fine. It just reminded me, it was one of those like almost too perfect chicken breast patties with like the perfect grill marks. And it just reminded me of like some dude in a factory somewhere pressing, like heating coils on raw chicken to burn, the perfect grill marks in it, and then like thousands of these chicken breasts just being cooked all at once. I might be wrong, but that's the vibe it gave me. Overall, the flavor was great. Cook Unity still has better quality, period. It's not come close. But the quality between like Flex Pro and Factor is massive. Factor is much, much higher quality on every level. The next thing we tried was the Cajun chickpea and okra stew with brown jasmine rice and Creole corn. The Creole corn was good. I mean, I'm a sucker for like corn salsa. Any shit with some sweet corn in it, I can get behind. So I like that a lot. I've always liked Middle Eastern food, and a lot of it uses jasmine rice. So I've always been a huge fan of jasmine rice as well. But I've never had brown jasmine rice. And if you're like me, yeah, you love white rice, but brown rice, like, unless it's in the right situation, that shit could be rough, But I have to say, the jasmine brown rice was fantastic. I couldn't even notice a difference between a regular jasmine rice or brown jasmine rice. And as a southerner, I've grown up people trying to force okra down my throat, whether it be in a stew, fried, etc. And okra is notorious for being difficult to cook and to cook well. It can be known to have like a slimy texture to it. And I have to say, overall, in a combination with the chickpeas and the jasmine rice and stuff, was pretty good. I mean, you can't ask for okra to be cooked better in a fucking microwavable meal than it was there. So I have to give them credit on that as well. And like I said earlier, I've loved Middle Eastern cuisine for a long time. So I've always been a big fan of chickpeas. And the chickpeas in this were just like perfect. They still had like that firmness to them, but were nice and tender, so you could just pop right through them. Overall, it's not something I would have ever like ordered at a restaurant, but I'm glad I got it. It was pretty good. I mean, it overall, like everything exceeded my expectations. Now we're gonna look at the white chicken chili with Mexican style zucchini and cilantro creme. The zucchini, like I said earlier, I love zucchini, but in every dish that had zucchini, it's the same story. Waterlogged, wet, just chewy, mushy, flavorless, like just, it took more away from the meal than it ever gave to the meal, if that makes sense. In every meal that there was zucchini, it took away more from the meal than it added, which is a shame. But the chili, on the other hand, I mean, of course, I like chili. I like a good chili. I like a chili with some beans in it. And I actually never had white chili until I think I was in my early 20s. I was in college, and me and a chick were living together at a time, and it was a dish she used to cook, I guess, for her parents and stuff. And she introduced me to it, and I have since then loved any sort of white chili. Obviously, white chicken chili is kind of the go-to. So when I heard this, I ordered 2 of them bitches, and I gotta say, I'm not disappointed. The pinto beans, etc., everything was fine. The only issue was that it could be considered a little soggy. Like, and when I say soggy, it's like you cook it and over in the corners just a little bit of water. Nothing too bad, nothing you can't mix it up and kind of like bring it together. But it was pretty good, I have to say. Like, the chili was fantastic. I ended up mixing the zucchini in the chili, and I will say it didn't really improve the chili, but it helped the zucchini out a whole lot. Now we're going to look at the creamy Dijon pork tenderloin with celery root, cauliflower mash, and broccoli. The pork was the toughest meat we've tried so far, but that's to be expected when you have like cuts of a tenderloin, a roast, just full cuts that you're cooking and then microwaving. That's just to be expected. A little chewiness, like it's going to take away from the tender, like, nature of a tenderloin or any cut of meat, to be honest. The mash was really good, but in like a odd way, in like a very different way. I'd never really had like celery root anything, so I wasn't for sure what to expect. I've had like cauliflowered rice, etc., but I've never had anything like that turned into, like a mashed potato substitute. And to be completely honest, it was pretty damn good. It was pretty satisfying. Like, I'm pretty satisfied overall with how it tasted. Texturally, it was a bit different from your normal mashed potatoes, etc. But overall, it was really well. It had really good flavor, and I enjoyed it a lot. I will say the broccoli, as I mentioned before when we looked at the other meal, all florets, which is a big plus for me. I think that's very important. Too many companies skimp and throw like broccoli cuts in there instead of florets, and if you're like me, that makes a big difference. It was just steamed broccoli. There wasn't any like crazy butters or anything like that, but it was still good. Next is the jalapeno lime cheddar chicken with spicy cilantro cauliflowered rice. The flavors were fine. It was nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing that's going to blow your mind, but just cheddar cheese, jalapeno, chicken. You can't really fuck that up. Again, the chicken breast patty seemed a bit too perfect, maybe a little too processed. I'm not for sure. The one thing I will say that was fantastic is when you mix the excess of the cheddar sauce with the riced cauliflower, like, damn, that shit worked really well together, because that cauliflower just took on the flavor of that cheese. It was pretty good. That was almost better than the meal as a whole. So another one of the meals we had was the shredded chicken taco bowl with roasted corn salsa and a cilantro lime sour cream. Now this is another one that, like, as you saw earlier, the dishes are like segmented into the main and the side, or the main and like two sides. This is another one where I just folded that shit in half, knocked it over, and just mixed it all together. For me personally, again, no crazy flavors that are gonna like rock your world, but overall good. It was a bit higher quality chicken. Might be this like placebo effect I'm playing on myself, but where the chicken was shredded, it didn't give me that same like, processed, stamp patty, chicken patty, like everything's identical. So again, that might just be me being in my own head, but overall it seemed a bit higher quality. Their corn salsa, as I said before, I am a corn salsa fan. It didn't have like the like boom or the zing to it that I normally like, but overall it was really damn good. And like the combination of that, mixing it with the shredded chicken taco bowl, the cilantro sour cream, it all worked really well together. I will say, I think this was the smallest portion. It was the one portion that I literally stopped and was like, damn, that's it. This is it. Like, and that's all of it. All right. Next is the vegan mushroom marsala with onion risotto and roasted garlic green beans. Now, I'm going to go on and say that the green beans were fantastic. I liked the Parmesan ones better. The marsala was a bit on the salty side, which anytime I've had a marsala, other than the tikka marsala, they tend to be on the saltier side. The mushrooms, they looked and felt like somebody took the time to hand cut some mushrooms. There wasn't just like some button mushrooms like opened and dumped in there, but the mushrooms were very fantastic. For some weird reason, the microwave gave them a little bit more of a like chewy texture, a little bit more of a firmness, but I actually kind of liked it, to be honest. The mushrooms were fantastic. The mushrooms and the green beans were fantastic. Were great. And the risotto, like, even texture wise, like, other than being slightly salty, like I said, because the mushroom masala and the risotto were all kind of in the same area, other than being a little salty, like, I didn't really notice anything one way or the other. It didn't stand out as being amazing and perfectly cooked, and it didn't stand out as being shit either. So it was a bit neutral. Again, it's not something that really added anything to the meal, but I also don't think it took anything away from it either. Now we're going to take a look at the spicy Pablano beef bowl with roasted broccoli rice and a scallion and a sour cream. And this is another one that I just folded that bitch in half and mixed it right up. The broccoli was much better when it was mixed than when it was by itself. And I think that's pretty much the case when it comes to any of the riced broccoli, the riced cauliflower, etc. Anytime you're able to mix it or add some flavor to it, it's going to help it out immensely, in my opinion. I don't know if it's the beef bowls, the taco bowls, but this was another one. This was one of only two that had me stopping and being like, damn, this is kind of small. Like, there's not a lot here. You know, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of them have like the main and then a side, or like a main and then two little things like a sour cream and then some rice broccoli, and that goes in the main. And this was one that had the sour cream and the rice broccoli that were to go in the main, and like it left you just wanting more. You know, the flavors were good. It, you know, it reminded me of like a really, really like good beef burrito or something that you just kind of dumped out on a plate. It was fun, but nothing crazy, nothing intense. It's not like with Cook Uni. Like with Cook Uni, there were flavors and shit we had with Cook Uni that I had never had or experienced in my life. Multiple dishes that were on restaurant quality level that I would have, that I have gone and paid 15 or 20 plus dollars for a similar dish. I can't really say that about anything with Factor, but that doesn't mean that they don't have good food and like better, at least better quality than certain places like, you know, Flakesboro Mills, for example. Next, we have mushroom chicken thighs and wild rice with garlic roasted green beans. And we're just going to say it. The one thing that Factor has down better than any company I have tried are the goddamn green beans. Whatever you boys do there to them fucking green beans, the Parmesan or the garlic, don't change it. Just open up a company where you're mailing motherfuckers green beans. Y'all will be a Fortune 500 company in a month or two. I swear to God. Swear to God. But yeah, the green beans were perfectly seasoned, perfectly cooked. I know a lot of people, if you've had like frozen green beans, or even if you've just had green beans from somewhere else, like a long green bean, a long string bean, you'll bite it, maybe some water will come out. Nothing like that. Absolutely fucking perfect, I have to say. Now, if I'm going to say anything was restaurant quality when it came to Factor, it was the green beans. The green beans were restaurant quality for sure. Now, the chicken thighs and the wild rice had an extremely nostalgic flavor to them. They tasted very much like a fall Thanksgiving meal. Like it just, you tasted like the sauce, you tasted the thighs and the rice, and it brought you back to like, you know, sitting at the table at grandma's with a few cousins around. Like it was very nostalgic. Not the best flavors or the best smell out of any of them, but it's still a solid choice. And if you like that, like chicken and gravy, turkey and gravy, like that sort of vibe, like this one's definitely like right up your alley. Next, we're gonna look at the cheesy garden herb chicken with creamy broccoli rice and chili garlic zucchini. And I ain't even gotta say it, the zucchini was shit. Chili garlic, my ass. It had no flavor. It was just a amalgamation of slime in the corner of a fucking plastic container. It was awful. I ate it, but look at me, of course I ate it. Now, the cheesy herb mixture was fucking amazing. I don't know what exactly it was, but it was like almost like a ricotta cheese with like scallions and like different herbs and shit in it. And the chicken was the same sort of patty. This time it didn't have the grill marks on it, so it looked even more alien. But when you mix that like cheesy herb sauce with the chicken, and oh man, with that, like get a little bit of the broccoli rice with a bit of that cheese and a little piece of the chicken, whoo, it was good. Because that cheesy herby chicken stuff had like just enough of a zing to it, you know, that like, you know, to really give that chicken another like kick in the ass. But I will say again, the chili garlic zucchini was probably the worst. I would say that was the worst thing I have had. There's one thing that tasted worse, but it would at least seem like it was higher quality. Now we're gonna look at the tomato and walnut, yes, tomato and walnut beef ragu with herbed ricotta and zucchini noodles. Now, unlike zucchini and the rest of the meals, they actually nailed it with these zucchini noodles. And again, I just mixed them all together, and I give me more zucchini noodles. More zucchini noodles. Like that's my main complaint with this one. Is it's nothing fancy, nothing crazy, like good, you know, classic like Italian style flavors. Just give me some more of them damn zucchini noodles, bruh. Give me some more of the zucchini noodles. Give me some more of the zucchini noodles. All right. Okay. This was the first and only one of two meals that gave me heartburn, like any sort of heartburn. And I won't say it was too substantial, but it was a bit of an annoyance for a couple hours after I ate it. And now we're on to the final meal, the tomato basil chicken risotto with Parmesan broccoli. Now, this was the second meal of two that gave me heartburn. Again, as I've mentioned before, one thing I like about Factor is that when they do give you broccoli, they give you florets. I think that's huge. That's big points in my book, and I like that a lot. The risotto had a bit more of a bite, a little bit more of a chewiness to it, but it was all good. It was nothing too good or bad. I will say the risotto seemed more like one of the riced broccolis than like what I remember of a good risotto. Overall, this was by far my least favorite meal. I love basil. Anytime I make spaghetti or anything like that, you better believe I got basil in that bitch. But they just overdid it. They just put too much basil in it. It was just too overpowering. Now, again, I finished the meal, but I would have to say the tomato basil chicken risotto with Parmesan broccoli is the one meal out of everything we've tried that I would not recommend anybody get. It was rough. Now, comparing the few we've looked at, Factor is much better when it comes to price, when it comes to quality, when it comes to taste than Flex Pro. But if it's available in your area, which can be an issue with Cook Unity is by far the best. I want to say Cook Unity and Factor are similarly priced, so you don't really have to, worry about, it's $50 more a week. If you're going to make this investment and you're going to take the leap, I would go on and recommend Cook Unity because, like I said, they're the only one we've tried so far that have meals that are legitimately restaurant quality. Now, I'm not sponsored by any of these companies. I'm just telling you what my fat ass feels and what I think. And like I wanted to say, Cook Unity was, again, I think like with the 50% off, I want to say it was around $110-ish. Factor with the 50% off for the 18 meals, it was $109. So they're fairly similarly priced. If you're more concerned with like green and the environment and this, that, the other, I would have to say Factor's overall packaging when it comes to like the box, the material used to keep it cool, etc., seems a bit more environmentally friendly. But the actual packaging, the trays, and Factor, they're just like, pressed and formed plastic. Whereas with Cook Unity, it's more of like a paper kind of cardboard-ish type thing with like a lining in it. So it seems like it would be much more biodegradable, etc., if that's more of your deal. I personally don't give a shit, to be honest, not to upset anybody, but that's not one of my, I'm poor. That ain't my main concern. It's money for meals. And I will have to say, even though they're fairly similarly priced, Cook Unity has the better recipes, the better flavors. I would say overall the better quality. I would say if you just look at it from like, hey man, that's cool. The packaging of Cook Unity is better head to toe. It gives you a bit more of like a feel of connection with like the person who at least created the recipe. Like you have the person's face on there, all this and that. Some of that stuff's not important to people. And if that's you, then Factor might be up your alley. When it comes to overall portions, I still have to lean towards Cook Unity. Because there was just, like I said, there were out of 16, 18 meals, there were 10 of them that, okay, this is fine. But there wasn't a single meal where it's like, whew, all right, I'm full, or ooh, that was a lot of food. Not a single one. Whereas with Cook Unity, there were a couple that were like, shit, it's going to take me like 10, 15 minutes to eat this. Like, it's going to be a minute. I think the next one we're going to try is Bistro MD, which is supposed to be more like medical doctors and blah, 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 your health. So we'll see how that goes. It's a different one in that it's not like, here's X amount of meals. It's more of like, here are your meals for 7 days, if that makes sense. Instead of here are just X amount of meals you can eat at any point in time, it's, oh, day one, this is your breakfast, this is your lunch, that's your dinner. Day two, So I might try and stay on that a little bit more strictly that week just to see how things feel. But that's the next one we got coming up. If you guys have any, like I said, especially if they got a 50% off or some shit like that, let me know. Throw it in the old comments there. You know, hell, give me something to snack on. You know what I'm saying? I think that'll bring us to the end of this review. So far, it's right in the middle. Factor is right in the middle. It's price wise on point with Cook Unity, both of which are cheaper than Flex Pro. Quality, flavor, recipe wise, it's much better than Flex Pro, but it's still lacking in comparison to Cook Unity. And if Cook Unity is not available in your area, Factor might be the place for you. But I appreciate you guys swinging by. If you were here for 5 minutes or the whole fucking 45 that I sit and rambled about this, I appreciate it either way. And we'll see you guys next time.